Let's start with the Monday Night Football. Manchester City held by Crystal Palace. Right, Nubaid, 18 shots, 46 touches in the Palace box, 74% possession, no goals. How frustrating a night was that for City and Pep Guardiola?
Morning, guys. I imagine it was a frustrating one, but I think the narrative around this game is actually quite interesting because it felt as though what people were saying was that Manchester City absolutely battered Palace. They were all over them. They had so many shots on target that Gaeta had to make 400 saves, and they hit the woodwork multiple times. I do think City did dominate the game. Palace also had their half moments on the counter. But I actually thought City were sloppier than they've been in other games this season, and that's nothing new against Palace. So, yeah, it was frustrating, but I don't think it's quite the narrative that I would be pushing after this game.
Yeah, so, James, as Nubaid says, Gaeta in inspired form in the Palace goal. Not quite 400 saves, but a string of fine saves. It was some performance from him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he was a lucky boy in the first half. He sort of parried one for De Bruyne, and I think Bernardo Silva should have scored after that. I'm intrigued about this narrative from Nubaid, though. You're saying, so they dominated the game, they hit the woodwork a load of times, they had great chances. Laporte should have scored about 2, I think, at least. But that's not the right narrative. What's the right narrative, then?
They hit the woodwork once, the other time was offside, and then when it came out, that was a save of the game from Gaeta, but that was also offside. Laporte's chance was also offside. Bernardo Silva definitely should have scored, 100%. But I don't think overall City were like absolutely perfect like we've seen them play previously. I mean, the stat I pulled out yesterday was unreal. Man City lost possession 151 times against Palace last night, and the only other time they've lost possession more times this season was against Crystal Palace at the Etihad. So that's the narrative I'm pushing.
Right, fair enough. Okay, I get it. Because the 76% possession that they had is inevitable, because that's the way that Man City play. I think it's one of those ones that the blueprint for beating Man City is having that little bit of luck and getting through the first half of the game. And they did get that little bit of luck, and they did get through the first half of the game. And I think you're right in terms of, as much as it was sort of sloppiness, it felt like it was a bit of tension actually in the second half because they hadn't got that goal. And that's what's going to be so great between now and the end of the season, guys, is the fact that this is the big now, guys. This is the final straight. So the tension is going to build, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can deal with it.
Well, James, we're Palace also lucky that Pep Guardiola decided not to make any substitutes. I'm just looking at the bench. There were a few defenders there. They actually had 2 goalkeepers on the bench as well. But they did have Gabriel Jesus, who's a striker who sometimes plays wide. They've got Raheem Sterling. Imagine being able to bring him on. And also, Gundogan can get goals from midfield as well. But he didn't change it and says he doesn't regret it.
Yeah, I think that's a lie. I would say that that's a lie, because ultimately, you know, if you keep it, you know, with the embarrassment of riches that they've got, they could have even done a Stuart Pearce and put Scott Carson up top for a bit. I'm sure he's still got something to offer. But in particular, Sterling, I think, is the big one here. It seems strange for someone in form like he has been over the last few weeks, with a point to prove as well, to not bring him on and change it. You know, nothing stays the same unless you change it. So it seems a bit odd. Ask Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He will say the same. If you don't make substitutions and you don't win the game, you're going to get some criticism. So I think it was a mistake. I think he should regret it.
I'm surprised he didn't look over his shoulder and just think, we're whipping balls in at the back post and continuously just missing. Grealish just isn't that sort of player. He doesn't lurk at the back post. It was Bernardo Silva who was in that area. And I'm thinking, you've got a guy on your bench who loves to tap them in at the far post. Raheem Sterling, get him on there. But a part of it felt like Pep was saying, I'm now, you know, Grealish in. I'm proving that Grealish is the guy, and I have to keep him on because Grealish is going to be the guy who gets us through this. I wonder what happens in the next game, whether Sterling starts. I wouldn't be surprised if Pep starts the exact same 11 again to make the point that it was definitely something he didn't regret.
Yeah, just to make the point. Nubaid, let's look at Palace, though. They become just the second side to stop Guardiola's Man City scoring home and away in a Premier League season. Just how impressive were they for you?
They dug in. I think the biggest thing that was impressive about Palace is, like James just said then, they've sort of set a little bit of a blueprint as to how you might be able to find your way past past Manchester City, and it's sort of sit in deep, but don't sit in your penalty area. And you don't have to lump it every time you get it, because you've got to have players who are willing to run at City, like Zaha, like Elise. Mateta, I thought, was bright, although he was so sloppy in possession at times. And then obviously you've got Conor Gallagher, and I think if you have a midfielder like him, and one thing I really noticed that Palace were doing was Gallagher was pressing Laporte every time he could, because he recognised that Laporte was a guy who sort of like opens the pitch up for City, and that forced City to look for other avenues for players who can switch the ball or play it into midfield. So I thought Palace were absolutely brilliant, and Patrick Vieira's proven that he can hang with the big boys.
Yeah, to have that. Sorry. Yeah, I think to have the personnel that he had in this game, I think is crucial, and I think that's the secret behind how Crystal Palace have been able to get points off Man City. Is exactly what Nubaid's saying there. Is that having players that not only can do that diligent work and have a bit of tenacity, but once they get the ball, look to drive. That's the only thing I would be a little bit disappointed with in terms of Palace, is that they had a few openings and opportunities on the counter-attack, and if they'd had a bit more, I guess, less youthful exuberance, they might have been that little bit calmer and done a little bit more, and actually might have even nicked this one instead of drawing it.
Well, James, the title race was already on. It's definitely on now. If Liverpool can win tomorrow night against Arsenal, the gap will be cut to just 1 point. But it was 14 points in Manchester City's favour. In February, Guardiola said at that stage it wasn't over. We all thought it was. He was right.
Yeah, he's stubborn, isn't he? Just to prove a point, he's done this, I think. Just to make it a little bit closer, and then he'll win it now at the end of it all. Yeah, I mean, huge credit to Liverpool. Huge credit, because this Man City side, the standards that we set for them are so high that even a draw is breaking huge news, and that's because of what Guardiola's been able to do there. If they do go on and lose it, having had that 14-point lead, let's be honest, it is a disaster. It is a disaster for a team to be that fluent, that competent, that dominant, and to not win the title when you're 14 points in the lead. I think it gives us all a little bit of hope, to be honest.
Yeah, Nubaid, these two play each other on the 10th of April, and Bernardo Silva said it's better to be in City's position than Liverpool's. Which team's got the upper hand at the moment?
I mean, if you think logically, Man City have a 4-point gap at the top of the table, so you would assume that the side you'd like to be is Manchester City. There's also other big fixtures to come. Liverpool have to play Arsenal.
I know what he's doing here. This is reverse psychology from the Liverpool fan here. I know what's happening here. Nubaid, I've known you a long time. I know what you're doing here, mate.
If I put you in Liverpool shoes now or Man City shoes, which shoes would you rather be in?
I'd love to be in both of those shoes. I think you enjoy being the underdogs. I think Liverpool enjoy being the underdogs. And I think if you ask Jurgen Klopp, I think deep down he'd be quite happy with the state of play at the moment, where it's a case of, foot to the floor, let's go for this and be the underdogs. I think that suits them better. But I think still Man City, with the quality that they've got, I get what Bernardo Silva's saying with the run-in that they have as well. That Arsenal game is not an easy game either, is it, Nubaid?
Well, it's Arsenal away from home, albeit Arsenal haven't scored in the last 5 games when they've played against Liverpool, all competitions. But Arteta has done very well this season, I think, in big games. They troubled City a lot. And I think they've troubled Liverpool the 2 times they've played him in the Carabao Cup. So I'm not entirely convinced, with a lot of people suggesting on social media that this is an easy win for Liverpool, and then it's a point, and then Liverpool will go win it at the Etihad and all this other stuff. For the storyline, for the story arc, is absolutely perfect. But if you ask me right now, I'd rather be at the top of the table than be second.
Well, the beauty of this, Nubaid, is that Jamie Carragher thinks these are the best 2 teams in the whole of Europe, whether it's first or second or not. Do you agree with that? It's quite hard to disagree.
I think, if you scan over Europe at the moment, and I think it's not only to do with the quality City and Liverpool have, but also with the lack of quality we've seen in Europe. Paris folding against Real Madrid with the players they've got, they should be doing a lot better. Madrid are still not the Madrid that we've known for decades. They're still searching for whatever the next phase in their time is. Barcelona are obviously nowhere near their peak. I think what is sort of quite telling is Inter Milan, the second best team in Italy, come to Liverpool and play at their absolute highest level for 180 minutes of football and still lose 2-1 in aggregate, where it felt like Liverpool was sort of holding them at arm's length. I don't know if I've missed someone, James. Maybe Bayern? Yeah,
I think Bayern Munich, I would put in there, definitely. I think what's great about, and I think we saw it with PSG, is the fact that the competition that they have in their own division, when they then step into the Champions League, they're not sort of battle-hardened. And I think in the Premier League, you've got so many great teams throughout the leagues and so many great squads that that helps Man City from that point of view. And then in terms of the recruitment, yeah, it's Man City and it's Liverpool. And Bayern Munich, I think, would be the other team that I would chuck in there, basically because they're just so well put together, and they basically take the pick of the best players from the Bundesliga. So I would put Bayern Munich in there as well.
Yeah. Well, just coming back to, you know, City, Liverpool, and Gary Neville, who said that he thinks that Liverpool's strike force could be the difference. James, what do you think about that?
I think it's more about styles of play here, because so Man City play and control the ball and take their time. And most goals that you see with Man City, there's loads of the opposition's defence knocking about. And like Crystal Palace, people making blocks and those opportunities to do that. But they do have the ball all the time. Liverpool give you a bit more of a chance going the other way. In terms of XG, the XG is 6 goals more for goals against for Liverpool because of that high line. So it's just very, very different styles. And it's one where, can they get done on the break, Liverpool? Or Man City, can they break down the opposition? I think it's more down to that than it is to strike force. But when I do look at that subs bench, I do look at it and I think, actually, Man City don't have the same depth that Liverpool have. And I think that's amazing for that to have occurred with just one signing in Diaz in the January window.
It's such a fascinating thing to me. Even as a Liverpool fan, we've complained about strength and depth for such a long period. And then we signed Diaz, and all of a sudden everyone was like, whoa, we've got great right backs, we've got great left backs. And I was like, look, we've had this for a while. We just bought in a very bright winger. But I think it's that sort of character he's brought with him where Liverpool have suddenly gone, we've got like another really top player. And because he can play along the front three, and because it allows you for other players to play in the position they're supposed to play, because Liverpool are always sort of trying to find fixes. Liverpool now are in a very good situation. In terms of strike force, I don't think you can argue which strike force is currently better, because Liverpool obviously have Salah and Mane, who's back in form again, and Firmino's coming back, and City don't have a striker. But I think the style of play is massively important, because I think if you watch Liverpool week in, week out, you get the feeling the other team can always get a point. But on the flip side, you go, but they never do. And that's clearly like how Liverpool want it to be. They want to give you that feeling so that you come out and play a little bit, and Liverpool can hit you on the counter, or Liverpool can get the pace in wide areas, or it gives Trent a bit more time, or it gives Robertson a bit more time. Whereas City will be so patient, like they were against Palace. There's less risk, but the reward is potentially a little bit smaller than what it might be for Liverpool.
Interesting.
Right, Nubaid, you can do this in one word, then James, you can go second, or it could be 2 words, I suppose, as one of the teams have 2 words. But Liverpool or Manchester City, who's going to win the title?
I have to say Liverpool, but I'll say Liverpool.
I said Man City at the start of the year, Man City.
Okay. All right, keeping it consistent, love it.